Hello and welcome to the Interactive Antifragility webinar, Practice Beyond the Rhetoric. Today is June the 30th, 2015, and we warmly welcome you to this interactive seminar. My name is Barry Bettman, along with Cy Alhier and a team of amazing panelists, Paul Gibbons, Leandro Herrero, and Lisa Kavanaugh. And we are so happy and proud to bring you this program today and have you on the call. I'm going to turn over to Cy to kick it off. Welcome, Cy.
Thank you so much, my friend. It's a pleasure to be with all of the panelists today. Likewise, all the participants that are joining us. Tremendous group of folks, tremendous group of experiences to really explore together. Again, you've mentioned Paul, you've mentioned Leandro, and you've mentioned Lisa. We're very interested in the exploration that we're going to do around the concept and what they've done with it through their experiences. And in order to kind of kick off, what I'd like to do is kind of go through and have the panelists introduce themselves, and then Barry, likewise yourself and myself, and we'll jump right into the conversation. Paul, welcome you to the event. Please share with us your background and what you'd like the folks to know about you.
Thanks. Hi, it's Paul Gibbons here, and it's a pleasure to be here. I've been in business about 35 years, first as a derivatives trader, the sort of derivatives trader that caused all the trouble back in 2007 and 2008. But for the last 25 years, I've been a consultant of one variety or another, first with PwC, and then in London I had my own firm specializing in leadership and culture change, which was called Future Considerations, which prospers to this day. And most recently, I've finished a book called The Science of Organizational Change, How Leaders Set Strategy, Change Behavior, and Create an Agile Culture. It's hard to get in bookstores now. It's easy to get on Amazon.com.
Definitely want to invite Leandro into the conversation. Leandro, welcome. And again, we're huge fans and practitioners of your work here in the States, and would love for the folks to learn a little bit more about you.
Well, thanks very much, and hello to everybody. I'm delighted to be here. I'm part of the group. So my name is Leandro Herrero. For the last 15 years, I've been running a small firm of organization architects dealing with all aspects of change, leadership, and design, and management of innovation, but mostly in the last few years, perhaps better known for viral change and the way of mobilizing people in a larger scale behavioral change.
And we also have Lisa with us, and Lisa is very much a practitioner in this space, and likewise tremendous contributions. So Lisa, would love to hear your voice and introduce you to the folks we have with us.
Hello, everyone. I'd just like to say thank you for the folks that organized this and for including me in the conversation today. I've been in the technology field for over 25 years and working through different organizations, but most of my career has been spent at Bed Bath & Beyond, working through different types of technology and influencing change and really technology innovation at this point in my career, and just really have had a lot of experience with change in an organization, how to adapt and evolve within it, and just working with folks as well as technology.
Barry, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, my friend?
Sure, thank you. This is Barry Bettman, and I have many hats. I'm the executive producer of the program today, and I'm an executive coach, and I'm new to the anti-fragility space. I came in through Cy and through some things about culture and through tribal leadership. I'm an ex-technologist turned human. I was in the computer business for 22 years. In the last 19 years, I've been doing coaching and facilitation. And so we're really happy and proud to bring you this program today through our teleconference system, Maestro Conference. And Cy, let's introduce you too.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm a consultant, a coach, working in the industry. As I like to say, I've been doing this a little bit too long, over 3 decades, and by all means I've enjoyed it tremendously. I really focus on, if you will, as I like to say, human nature, and classify myself as a student of human nature and human dynamics, and work with individuals, teams, and organizations. I've been very, very fortunate to be influenced by a number of folks out there, including, again, the folks on this call, and definitely looking forward to working with clients where we can have an impact. So thank you for the opportunity again for being together with the panelists and the participants today. Barry, do you want to kick us off, or would you like me to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll do that. And let's give our participants a little idea of the framework through the top of the hour. We're going to spend about 30 minutes or so with our three panelists, Paul, Leandro, and Lisa, in an open discussion here with 3 questions. And then we're going to have some time for interaction with questions and answers from the participants, and that will come after about 30 minutes or so, maybe a little less because we're a little farther into the call right now. So for Paul and Leandro and Lisa, we have 3 questions that we'd like to sort of set the stage, and here are the 3 questions. Number 1 is, how have you interpreted Taleb's concepts of anti-fragility? Number 2, how have you translated this interpretation into actual practice? And number 3, what are the results and the impacts of your effort? So let's open it up to Paul, Leandro, and Lisa. This is going to be not formal, but like our other calls, but kind of an informal and more of a interaction. So over to our beautiful panelists today. Let's just start with the first question to sort of open it back up again. How have you interpreted Taleb's concepts of antifragility? And so all your mics are open for the panelists.
Hi, it's Paul here. I think I'll make a tentative start. I want to say that there's a temptation in the consulting world when there's a new expression, a new word, a new way of looking at things, a new concept, for there to be a reconceptualization or a sort of land grab and a pulling together of older concepts under this new label. And so I wouldn't like to pretend at all that I'm an anti-fragility expert. I think there's enough new in the concept to mean that everyone, all practitioners in the area of anti-fragility, if you will, or organizational structures that create anti-fragile organizations, need to approach with a certain amount of humility. I think we'll still be learning from Taleb's ideas in 25 years. I think there is an important as that. So partly anti-fragility is a reconceptualization of some older ideas. In Taleb's book, he talks about Seneca and some of Seneca's strategies 2,000 years ago as being anti-fragile. I also want to say that there's one of the emphases in my book is that we treat the work we do as consultants as more experimental and treat our results with more humility than is sometimes the case in the consulting world. And so again, I see this as an opportunity for consultants and business practitioners to begin to experiment with this idea and to prototype this idea rather than attempting to get things right from the outset, the old sort of what Taleb calls the Soviet Harvard planning mindset. So that's my way of a sort of an introduction, I think a warning, to myself as someone who's thought of as an authority in this area, but also to other authorities. I think there's lots of work to be done for us to continue to learn from what Taleb has to offer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Paul has kind of framed, really. I mean, I'm perhaps too optimistic about anti-fragility, and that's not my nature with new concepts, which are not new. I'm fairly skeptical of the trends of new ideas that seem to come from the sky and then for a while take over airtime in conversations, whether it's clients or consultants, to be honest, more in consultants than clients. So anti-fragility comes, however, with adding with a different flavor. I think in summary, I think there is something really important there, and without trying to be grandiose, I would think that probably this is something that has tremendous consequences that we have just perhaps start scratching the surface of how far you can go with that. Conceptually, is not that difficult to understand. It takes resilience and adaptation and agility to a different level, to a different place, at a place of which is well described by Taleb. But there is something there that one feels that it could have many applications. Some of them perhaps challenging and perhaps not simple, and it's one of these things that doesn't come, in my view, doesn't come fully cooked and fully packaged, other than conceptually, and therefore you just take it off the shelf and say, oh, here we go, and there is something that you can do and make some money with that. As not the case, and certainly you wouldn't expect that from Taleb's mind, but it's something that has made me think quite a lot. By Paul, I'm saying I'm not suggest for a second that I'm an expert on that. I'm an expert in scratching surfaces and trying to dig something inside. But I think that I want to believe that we take it seriously. It will be for a little while that we will still be talking about the implications and the practicalities and the challenges even in the thinking that we may have about organizations, some of them perhaps with no very good answer yet on what you do with some of these things. But it's good, it's great to have something that one can feel that it has intellectual rigor and challenging versus the history of ideas where in many cases fade very quickly because they don't have much solidity. I think this is not the case of Antifragility. I may be wrong, but that's my view so far.
So yes, I mean it's very interesting to hear what Paul and Leandro have to say just with respect to the newness of concepts, but based upon things that have really, I guess, been more intuitive to us in the past, but not necessarily followed. I think from my perspective, having been in an organization and been in technology and having to deal with the changes that come along with, running the organization and managing the change in the organization, is that change is constant, and really that awareness, there's a subconscious way that we have to adapt to it and in order to survive in it. And I think really Tal hits on that with the unpredictability and the chaos of it being natural. And I think that creating that awareness for me when I interpret it is that unpredictability and the chaos of things, and that really those that are successful in a state of an organization that changes and grows and evolves really are successful through embracing that unpredictability and that chaos. So for me, it was a sense of almost a weight that was lifted off, that my ability to survive and adapt in that environment really is what allowed us to grow and evolve, and that it wasn't quote unquote a bad thing, it was a very natural thing. As well as my interpretation was also influenced as I read The Art of War, which also emphasized for me the criticality of that approach and that mindset to how we have to navigate through the changes that we are forced to deal with on a daily basis and sometimes hourly basis in what we do every day as practitioners. And really helping us to, like I said, ultimately evolve, I think, is key. So reflecting back on my many years of experience, it really helped me interpret and understand, as Tal put it into words, and create that awareness for me.
Excellent. It's interesting hearing all three of you. Do you get the sense that we're returning to something that we were once accustomed to, returning to something original, returning to anti-fragility? How do you feel like we've had this before, but we're returning to where our origins are and then moving forward?
Anti-fragility as a concept, and it needs other concepts. It needs the concept of crisis, the concept of stress, the concept of something that happens and destabilize the system. So you can't separate the anti-fragility conceptually and application and view and frame and whatever you want to do with that from the idea of what happens on stable or semi-stable environments, on systems that protect themselves, which is what they do, or crises that come. So there is an assumption that the anti-fragility concept or consequences will be more obvious when you explore crises and when you explore situations in which anti-fragility wasn't there.
Super briefly, I think there's a tremendous opportunity, a tremendous vacuum in the marketplace for ideas now. Taleb, for all his brilliance, has only worked in one highly structured organization, which is Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse, First Boston. And his expertise as an organization consultant is limited. And so many of his ideas are from the personal sphere, from the medical sphere, from the political sphere, the areas in which his level of scholarship is substantial. But he's not an organizational consultant, and I think there's a tremendous job for us as practitioners, and I'm saying us in the collective sense of the people on this call who are now listening attentively, and also the panelists, to, in a sense, take his concepts to the next level so that businesses can make sense of them and understand them. There are very few, I think perhaps even none, examples of businesses that are anti-fragile, or teams that are anti-fragile, or communities that are anti-fragile in his book. And so, we have an opportunity, a collective opportunity, I think, to take what are some very powerful ideas and interpret them in the world of organizational behavior, organizational change, and organizational design.
Yeah, really good. We have a couple of questions from our participants, so let's include them.
Yes, it's Don Gould. I was wondering if anyone has given any thought to what the underlying fundamentals might be that could be used to drive or design an anti-fragile organization.
Well, hi, it's Paul here, and I don't think, first of all, that the book has been written yet, but I think one of the answers will lie in the area of change agility. I want to say that I have a dog in the fight because that's part of the title of my book, but the concept that a leader leads a change project is one that I think may have reached its sell-by date, as we say in England. And the new ideas on change leadership that I admire the most are that leaders actually create structures and processes and cultures and people that are change agile. And their main job as a change leader is not in the narrow focus of a project, but to create organizations that don't suffer from change fatigue. I've walked in as a consultant into organizations, into a change project where people are so demoralized and so hampered by initiativitis that even the mention of another big initiative has eyes rolling and has people running for cover. And so those kind of organizations, you could say, are anti-change agile, if you will. And there are organizations that I think that are great examples of change agility. I mean, I think one of the companies I admire the most is IBM, which, just to introduce a tiny bit of their history, they began in meat slicers, if you'd believe. And over the course of their 100-year history, there's been no technological marketplace, technological environmental context which has been more challenging than the IBM debit in technology. They started with calculators and then into mainframe computers and then into microcomputers, and now they're in neurosynaptic chips and smart data and smart grid technology. And so it's a company which has been, at the forefront of the technological transformations that we've seen in the last 100 years, and they've managed to prosper. And so the great question that you've asked, Doug, is, of course, what's in their DNA? And I think there are other examples today. I think Google's an example today also, and I think Amazon might be an example today. What is in the DNA of companies such as that allows them to, we're using DNA obviously as a metaphor, that allows them to prosper in environments that are considerably more turbulent than many of the other competitive niches than in many other industries? So, I mean, I've done the very consultancy thing of answering your question with a question, but I hope that stimulates some further discussion.
Paul, I love how you described leaders creating or fostering the space for that emergence to occur. So very, very, very well contributed.
There are at least three situations or three scenarios where we could start looking for answers, and they are very different, and some of them are a little bit more difficult than others in trying to understand what's going on. Number one is what I would call the daily life. Stuff happens, daily life is daily life, there is adaptations, there are things, and the anti-fragility concept has to answer the question how the company grows and gets better on daily life, sometimes in a very non-visible way, but any advance on something is not just a compensation, is not just an adaptation, is not even resilience. How progresses in a way that the growth, or whatever you want to call it, gives the company to a new baseline all the time, to new possibilities, etc. There is no very good answer for that, but daily life should be certainly something that we should look at, and it's hard but there is when you have some examples of people who can say, well, they are doing almost quietly, but going into that direction. The second scenario, an easier one, is a crisis. You have a crisis and you have a stress system, you expect the system to respond. So how you respond? Well, the traditional way would have been, well, you respond to adapt or you die, but if you adapt and you are resilient and you are agile and the rest, well, you are okay. And now Antifragility is coming and saying, no, that's not good enough, it's not enough, you have to go somewhere else from that because you have to create something new from the crisis and get to a new baseline. How do you do that? How did you So analyzing crisis, what I call the anatomy of a crisis within a company, is for me a tool that I use all the time to understand what is going on there, because the crisis is an experimental situation that comes to you unexpected, and you have all the ingredients hi-fi. So you have all the components of the DNA of the company highlighted and amplified, and to the point that in some cases companies say, we are very good at crisis. Give us a crisis and we'll do great things. What is the next crisis? Okay, so that in itself an experimental situation to look at. And the third is when it's similar to a crisis, but in a more benign one, where you inject the crisis. What we call reboot, and I know Paul has also the same concept applied different way. We apply a stress system, sometimes in a simulating way, to a company and saying, imagine that tomorrow this is happening. How can we stress the system? What is that will survive? What is it will do? A little bit like the stress in the banks, in the banking system, but the stress in the organization. And we have a tool and an approach that we call rebooting, which we just do a kind of timeout, and we look at things inside, we unbundle the components, and strictly speaking, we do that not when there is a crisis. Sometimes we do it, and I hope that we do more and more, on when there is no crisis, where there is a pretty normal state of affairs. But you want to break that normality and inject something that shows what is behind. So again, that gives us a good sense of the components that sometimes they were hidden and we didn't know that they were there, but you could say there are components that could be the good ones for agility, or no, or more than that is for antifragility. So at least these three areas of daily life, the crisis anatomy, and the reboot or injection of a stress in the system would be three situations where it would be, I think, very fruitful to look at finding that DNA for antifragility if there is such a thing.
So folks, with the limited time, maybe we should move toward, if you will, closing statements from the panelists and kind of advance the conversation at this point. And I'm sure there will be other conversations in the future that we can all dive into. But maybe we start off with closing comments and go with Paul and then Leandro and then Lisa.
Yeah, thank you. This has been a pretty powerful discussion. Thank you for your questions, Doug, and for your insights and questions, Kelly. I want to run through a fast menu. This is almost an answer to Doug's question. It's almost something like setting the agenda for the next conversation. And these are a menu of items from if you want, from Taleb. I won't be able to do them justice. But one of the things he talks about is the importance of information and the importance of bottom-up information rather than top-down information. And so I think when we come up with a clear set of answers to anti-fragile organizations, bottom-up information flows are going to be part of it. We spoke a little bit about change agility. The other thing that the third thing is small is beautiful. And so he talks at great length about fragile small subunits, which have a lot of variation within them being fragile, but which support an anti-fragile larger entity. And some of the interesting stuff around new organizational structures, perhaps people have read about holacracy. I think that's interesting. Perhaps people have read about project-based business, project-based hybrid businesses. Those are both examples, I think, experiments in the small is beautiful concept that Taleb thinks is important. He also talks about detecting fragility. We can't predict when a 9.0 quake will hit San Francisco, but we can't assess San Francisco as a fragile entity in the face of such a quake. And so we want to study the systems we work in and look for fragile examples, or even that we can't predict the stressors, and when they'll come, we'll look for the fragilizing elements. And one of the most fragilizing elements, this is point number 4, is skin in the game. And people, one of the things that his criticism is people who prosper at the expense of the fragility of smaller entities. And he gives the examples of hourly waged workers, for example, who have fragile, if you want, fragile standards of living. Their fragility creates the robustness because of flexible labor laws of the larger organization. And so the people who run organizations or are shareholders in organizations prosper at the expensive fragility of the smaller subunits, that is the individual workers. And the final thing he says is that we want strategies that rely less on prediction. And he's very much someone who encourages us to be humble in our abilities to predict the future, to control the future. And so that would be, if you want, the 6th element of what I would see as a menu of topics for an anti-fragile discussion in the future. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Paul. How about Leandro relative to closing comments, my friend?
Okay, I'll be very quick because we're running out of time, all of us. And so I will make some blanket statements that will need to be developed and with time may look different. But I think that anti-fragility, which is there conceptually, needs to be married or understood or coupled or whatever you want to call it with systems and systems thinking. That is impossible to understand anti-fragility and its applications without understanding how systems work. And in Taleb it's kind of implicit there, but it's a serious theme because the systems element sometimes is too complicated, is too technological, and many people get put off. So like the challenge is how to bring people to systems thinking without getting into very sort of high-tech mathematical things.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Leandro. Lisa, how about yourself relative to closing comments?
Just very quickly, I think Paul and Leandro really did sum it up well. I think that just gaining the understanding of the environments and the systems, as Leandro said, and really understanding how creating that awareness of the concepts and then how to apply them. And I absolutely agree, from the bottom up and how the teams and the organizations can really adapt and evolve through the, not from a push down from the top, but really embracing the concepts and embracing the thought process, and so that they can, it's not going to be a flip of a switch. They are going to evolve through the process, and how that can be done in a viral way to make them stronger as they change. So I think that it's very exciting. Just that, like I said earlier, that the awareness is being created, and it's very, I'm very excited to see how it does kind of take form as more people try to understand it and try to gain those learnings and the best way to apply it.
Excellent. Well, definitely. We're very much past time. Definitely want to say thank you to all the panelists and all the participants. Likewise, I think very much the folks on the call today are pioneers in this space and will continue to advance and push the envelope forward. I leave you with a quote, and then I'll turn it back to Barry. I leave you with a quote from Taleb himself. He says again, everything that has life in it is to some extent anti-fragile. And the secret of life is anti-fragility. So definitely it'll be an exploratory journey as we all as pioneers advance together. And with that, I turn it back to Perry. And again, thank you to the panelists and thank you to the participants.
Well, thank you so much, Si. I appreciate it. And thank you to all the participants and those that will be listening to this recording in the future. And a special thanks to our panelists, Paul, Leandro, and Lisa. This completes today's interactive anti-fragile webinar, Practice Beyond the Rhetoric, and we'll see you next time.